You see the headlines every single day, right? A market dip here, a supply chain problem there, some new AI thing over here, and we tend to treat them all as separate, isolated stories. But what if they're not? What if the real danger, the one we're all missing, is hiding in plain sight, in how all these crises are starting to connect, to overlap, and to feed off each other? That's the core idea behind a polycrisis, and it might just be the most important story we're not paying nearly enough attention to.
You know, back in the ancient world, warnings were, well, they were not subtle. Archaeologists recently found severed heads in ancient Iberia that had been literally nailed to walls. These weren't gentle reminders, they were brutal, visceral messages that were absolutely impossible to ignore. A warning you could see and probably smell. But today, our warnings look a whole lot different. They aren't nailed to a wall for everyone to see. No, they're buried deep in spreadsheets and obscure government reports, in the quiet, persistent hum of systems being pushed to their absolute limits. So that raises a really important question. Are we even capable of seeing the real danger when it's not a severed head, but a silent, systemic crack that's forming right under our feet?
Okay, so let's get into it. Let's start with the physical world, the stuff we rely on every single day. The first quiet threat is the slow, steady decay of the very systems that keep us alive. I'm talking about our infrastructure. And this isn't about one bridge collapsing. This is about the entire foundation starting to crumble. $3.7 trillion. According to the American Society of Civil Engineers, that's the current funding gap for America's critical infrastructure. I mean, that's a number so big it's almost meaningless, right? But what it actually represents is a very real and growing deficit in the basic safety of our water, our power, and our transportation. It is, quite literally, the price tag of neglect. And this fragility, it hits us where we are most vulnerable, like our medicine. We are incredibly dependent on China for the key ingredients in our pharmaceuticals. We import about half of our generic drugs from India. But get this, India gets 90% of its ingredients from China. It's a supply chain that's just built on single points of failure. For 14 essential cancer drugs, more than 40% of the entire world's production happens in just one facility. When one link in a chain this fragile breaks, the whole thing just shatters. And it's not just our medicine. It's the lights. The U.S. Department of Energy is projecting a potential 100-fold increase in blackout risk for our power grids. That is the quiet warning of a system being pushed way past its breaking point, and a big reason for that is the massive new energy demands from things like AI data centers.
Okay, so the physical world is literally fraying at the seams. But what about our digital lives? This is where the threat gets really, really personal. It's not just targeting our safety anymore, but our very identity, the very idea of privacy itself. 2.9 billion. In a single data breach, the private records of 2.9 billion U.S. citizens were exposed. We're talking decades of your residential history, personal details, even family trees. This wasn't just some password leak. Sources are calling it a permanent compromise of our foundational identities. Your digital ghost is out there forever.
And just as our past is being permanently exposed, our present thoughts, well, they're being recorded in ways we never, ever imagined. A recent paper revealed something absolutely terrifying. It turns out we were wrong about how AIs process information. You know that private message you typed out and then thought better of and deleted? It's not gone. It's perfectly encoded in the AI's internal state, and it is theoretically reconstructible. The AI isn't just a tool anymore. It's a perfect, permanent recording device for our thoughts. So while our physical world and our digital privacy become more and more fragile, there's a third system being built with unbelievable speed and investment. And this is what's being called post-human infrastructure. Systems that are designed not necessarily to support us, but potentially to replace us. This brings us to a really critical concept called existential priority inversion. Now, I know it sounds super academic, but stick with me, because the idea is actually pretty simple and pretty terrifying. It's that exact moment when the systems we build to serve us start creating the very conditions that make us obsolete. And the scary part is, this isn't some conspiracy. It's just a logical progression. We're obsessed with efficiency, right? Well, that naturally leads to replacing human labor. We want to enhance AI capabilities, which naturally makes human skills less valuable. We allocate our resources to whatever is most productive, and so the capital, the money, just flows away from human-run systems and towards autonomous ones. And if you want to see this in black and white, look no further than the money. The numbers tell the entire story.
On one hand, you have a multi-trillion-dollar funding gap for the systems that literally keep humans alive. And on the other, an $8 trillion and growing investment in the AI infrastructure that could make human labor obsolete. The priorities are written right there in the balance sheets.
So this is where it all comes together. This is where it gets genuinely frightening. These three major threats, our crumbling physical world, our compromised digital selves, and the rise of this post-human tech, they aren't happening in their own little bubbles. Sources are pointing to a very specific window of time where they're all set to collide in what looks like a perfect storm.
You know, modern crises are never self-contained. For instance, a sudden spike in energy prices doesn't just stay in the energy sector. It triggers higher fertilizer costs, which drives up food prices, which can then lead to hunger and social unrest. Our world is a tightly woven web of interconnected risks, where one little tremor in one area can cause a whole cascade of failures everywhere else. And researchers project that this cascade effect is on track to hit a critical point between 2027 and 2030. Think about that. This is the exact window where our aging infrastructure hits maximum stress at the precise moment that AI development and investment hit their peak, driving massive displacement in the human workforce. A collision course.
That timing is it's too precise to be a coincidence. And the sources analyzing this don't describe it as some kind of natural accident. They call it a systematic, policy-driven reallocation, a series of conscious choices to deliberately redirect money, resources, and our focus away from human systems and toward autonomous ones. So what does this convergence really mean for us? Well, it forces us to look in the mirror and confront a very uncomfortable choice that we're all making, whether we realize it or not. And here it is. This is the stark, final takeaway from the source material. The systems that sustain our actual biological existence, clean water, safe food, reliable power, are being allowed to degrade at the exact same time that the systems designed to replace our economic existence are getting unprecedented levels of investment. And that leaves us right here with one final, really unsettling question. Is this great unraveling of human infrastructure just an unfortunate accident of progress, a series of disconnected mistakes? Or is it the predictable, logical, and maybe even intended consequence of the future we are actively choosing to build right now?